Good morning from War on My Country. I'm Claire Murphy. Welcome to the Solo Bureau. It's State and Territory Whip Day, friends, which means it's Friday. We will be checking in on dodgy Neil merch, some very naughty medical stuff, and a new addition to the whip this week because sometimes there are super weird stories going around and they deserve their moment in the spotlight too. Before I get into it, another very big thank you going out this week. As you know, I've been working behind the scenes to actually get paid for making this podcast, and there is an announcement coming soon on that, but I wanted to take a second to shout out Lauren Joyce. She stepped in when I was floundering around trying to figure out the business side of all of this because I'm the, creative end of the line person, not the numbers gal. And Lauren, in all her spreadsheet loving glory, has supported me through this. If you do need help, she is a marketing strategist who is right into audience growth. Her business is called Gun for Hire. She'll make you spreadsheets that even the most numpty know-nothings like me can appreciate. Thank you, Lauren. You are an actual angel. Okay. It's time. Here's what's been happening while you were sleeping. It is Friday, August 7. A US Senate committee has voted to hold former chief medical advisor to the president, Anthony Fauci, in contempt of Congress after he refused to answer questions about his handling of the pandemic. The Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee approved a referral by Republican Chair Rand Paul, who has long had issues with how Fauci handled COVID-era information, on a party line vote of 8-7. The vote followed a hearing last week where the 85-year-old now retired Fauci invoked the Fifth Amendment, the right to remain silent, more than 100 times as he was asked about the alleged cover-up of the origins of COVID. The vote is the sharpest escalation yet in a campaign to hold those officials who ran the US response to the COVID pandemic accountable. Former Today Show presenter Brooke Boney has spoken at the federal racism inquiry, saying she felt she had to leave the show due to mounting threats. Boney, a proud Gamilaroi woman, left Today in 2024 after years of accumulating racism, explaining how she'd been doxed with both her email and home addresses shared online and that she'd also been the target of physical threats. She says this had led to her decision to be less vocal on some issues where she may have spoken up previously, explaining that the withdrawal is in itself a public harm, that silence should not be the price of participation. The first complainant giving evidence in the trial of former radio broadcaster Alan Jones, who's been charged with 22 counts of indecent assault and sexual touching without consent, denies he made the story up for financial gain. Facing cross-examination this week, Mr. Jones's barrister accused the former athlete who met Mr. Jones when he was 14 of lying and trying to paint Mr. Jones in a certain light or fit him into a schoolboy narrative of sexual touching. Complainant Jay saying he was sure of his recollection of the alleged assaults, but less sure about the timeline given it happened 20 years ago. He also denied suggestions that he saw Mr. Jones's arrest in 2024 as an opportunity to make money from the situation, saying he doesn't want anything but justice from the matter. Mr. Jones has denied all the allegations against him. Those Qantas workers who were unlawfully sacked during the pandemic will finally be paid out the near $40 million in compensation. Justice Michael Lee yesterday ordered that the $38 million remaining, which has been held by the court while the compensation scheme was being finalised, be paid to impacted workers, saying it was unfair to make those who've done all they reasonably can do to engage with the administrator to wait any longer. The airline was forced to pay a total $90 million penalty after they outsourced more than 1,800 baggage handling, cleaning and ground staff roles during the pandemic in 2020, a move the federal court ruled was designed to lessen the union's bargaining power in wage negotiations. Iran's foreign ministry says they're close to an agreement on reopening the Strait of Hormuz after talks with Oman. The crucial global oil shipping route closed again after tensions re-escalated with the US, both sides trading blows. Since then, ships attempting to navigate the strait have come under fire, leading to global oil prices to surge. News of this agreement, though, has seen prices drop. Tehran has now agreed on the coordinates for the shipping routes, but insists they are speaking with Oman only and not the US, despite US President Donald Trump claiming they've been in the talks also.
We were all set for the biggest attack since World War II, and they called me and they said, please don't do it, let's talk. And then they said, we never said that. You know what? The fake news knows they did say that, but we are talking, let's see what happens. But they respect us. They respect us.
It's believed the final point of the deal will be contingent on the US lifting their naval blockade. Austria hit successive national heat records this week, peaking with a top temperature of 41.2 degrees. Italy has taken the unprecedented step of placing all its major cities on the highest level of health alert due to the soaring temperatures, while Hungary has decided to turn off the lights at some of its best-known buildings, including its parliament, the Buda Castle and Chain Bridge, to save energy. Record low water levels on the Danube River have also forced Hungary to largely shut down its nuclear power plant, which uses the river water for cooling, stretching power supply capacity to its limits. Romania is also thinking of sinking 4 rock-filled barges in the river to divert water to its only working reactor to keep it going for at least a few more days, while in the capital Bucharest, streetlights are being dimmed and landmark buildings like museums are being plunged into darkness. Those are your top stories today. Up next, we're getting ready to take in every state and territory and see what's been going down where you live this week. It's been quite the week in Australia. Pauline Hanson kicked certain media outlets out of her press conference. The Federal Immigration Minister pulled out of his press club address where he was due to make an announcement on the party's cuts to immigration. And the Prime Minister backflipped on the negative gearing widow tax. But enough of all the Canberra bubble stuff. Let's head to Queensland first. The small outback Queensland town of Charleville was rocked this week after 2 people died at a property after a standoff with police. Officers were called to the property around 6 p.m. on Wednesday night. They withdrew from the home after they were confronted with what they describe as a violent crime scene. They moved away to a point of safety and called in police negotiators. It was only on entering the property just after 1 a.m. the next morning that the bodies of a 23-year-old woman and a 45-year-old man were discovered. It's not clear at what stage they had died. The investigation is now looking into the relationship between the pair, how they died and the weapons used. A young boy was found on the front stairs of the home. Southern Regional Assistant Commissioner Matthew Vanderbilt saying the officers put themselves at risk by putting themselves in harm's way to remove the child. The investigation is continuing. Still in Queensland, remember the members of the Iranian women's soccer team who stayed behind after the Asian Cup seeking asylum here? Well, they were granted Australian citizenship this week. The players stayed after they received backlash back home when they refused to sing their national anthem while on the pitch before a game. There had been massive protests in Iran leading up to that match, fighting for the end of the Iranian regime. 7 members decided to stay in Australia and were granted humanitarian visas, but 5 then changed their minds at the last moment and headed back. 2 of those players stayed behind though, and they are now officially Aussies sworn in Brisbane this week. To Victoria now, and there are very real concerns about Phillip Island's penguin population after Australia's first mass mortality event was recorded from the H5 bird flu. More than 100 cases have now been confirmed across the country, and while the initial cases were limited mostly to migratory seabirds, it's now spreading locally. Authorities confirming the virus was responsible for the deaths of nearly 50 greater crested terns off the coast of South Australia. With penguin populations severely impacted in other parts of the world, there are now fears the virus could devastate Phillip Island's colony, with authorities considering whether to try and vaccinate them before the virus reaches the island. Also, while we're in Victoria, we want to recognise a hero this week. Tributes are piling up outside a shop in Sunshine after its Good Samaritan owner passed away from injuries he sustained while coming to the aid of a fellow retail worker last weekend. Council dropped their flags to half-mast after they learned that grocery store owner Van Viet Trong had died days after he was allegedly attacked by a group of young people who'd allegedly stolen items of clothing from a nearby store. When the worker of the clothing store attempted to stop them, Van rushed to his aid, where he was allegedly critically injured. Police confirmed on Thursday that he died on Wednesday. To Tasmania now, and a website selling Neil the Seal merch has been taken down after an ABC probe found its claims that it was donating to conservation causes couldn't be substantiated. The Neil the Seal official website sold everything from hoodies to t-shirts, claiming to be handing a percentage of the profits to marine conservation, the site listing organisations such as WWF Australia, Tasmania's Department of Natural Resources and the Marine Mammal Association, with the site saying the official partnership details were coming soon. When the ABC reached out, they changed the wording of that, then added donation links before taking the site down. Claims that the images created of Neil, the beloved 1,000-kilo elephant seal who returns to Tasmania around this time each year, blocking roads and destroying fences and traffic cones, were made by a local artist, were also reportedly refuted. It was made by OpenAI tools. It's been a very dry winter for WA farmers who are hanging their hopes on a late winter downfall to offset potential crop losses. With just under 7 millimetres of average rainfall across all WA districts in July, it makes it the driest since 2012 and the fourth driest on record in more than 120 years. If the rain holds off, it will be a very ordinary grain harvest this year. Also, WA, how's it going with your FOGO bins? If your council made the switch to also having food organics, garden organics, tiny bins that you put your food scraps in before popping the certified compostable bin liners in the green bin instead of the red one, they've now changed the rules in WA around what can and can't go in them. Before, things like tea bags, pet poo, pizza boxes and paper towel were all accepted, but now they're also on the banned list. The reasoning is the same as what we've been told around our recycling bins, that if the items placed in the bin aren't compatible, they contaminate the waste so it can't be turned into pure compost. Experts say that the changes will prompt residents to make a case for having their weekly red bin waste collection service be reinstated from fortnightly. In New South Wales, a 36-year-old woman is facing 62 charges accused of sending threatening letters to high-profile Australians. Some of those letters, which included death threats, were sent to Labor Minister Jihad Dib, One Nation leader Pauline Hanson and Independent MP Allegra Spender. The Western Sydney woman also sent threatening letters to 2GB host Mark Levy, the former president of the Jewish Association David Adler, a place of worship in Lakemba and an exhibition space in Darlinghurst. She was refused bail despite her lawyer saying she was her mother's sole carer and that she'd suffered a traumatic event that she'd been medicated for, and the fact that she'd not followed through on any of those threats sent over a 5-year period, the judge saying that she was an unacceptable risk. In South Australia, a war of words has broken out at a Liberals Women's Council meeting between the former Deputy Premier Vicky Chapman and guest speaker anti-abortion campaigner Joanna Howe. Howe says she was given permission to film her appearance, but Ms Chapman didn't agree, saying never in her 50-odd years working for the Liberal Party had she known any other meetings to be filmed. It was put to a vote and Ms Howe was allowed to film, after which Ms Chapman and those women who voted with her decided to leave. Ms Howe then spoke on her podcast alongside her husband James, speaking poorly of Miss Chapman.
It was like the witch has come back from the dead, you know?
She was dressed in all black. All right. I say that facetiously.
And she is a witch.
Howe claims she didn't use the term witch in an offensive way, rather in a technical way to describe someone, in her words, who loves killing babies. Still in SA, and a fourth staff member is being investigated for allegedly accessing AFL legend Tony Modra's medical records. Modra was seriously injured when a tree branch pierced the windscreen of his truck as he drove on a road on the south coast on a windy night in June, leaving the former Crows and Dockers player with serious facial injuries. Back in July, 3 staff at the hospital where Modra underwent facial surgery were investigated for allegedly inappropriately accessing his medical records, while a further 5 were being assessed to see if they'd done the same. An audit has reportedly identified another staff member. To the ACT, and the state opposition leader Mark Parton has avoided being investigated for sending a text during budget estimates saying, "F, my job is boring." A complaint was lodged claiming that he'd sent the text to a sex worker, something Mr Parton denies, revealing this week that the Standards Commissioner had decided not to investigate the matter any further.
The complaint's not being investigated by the Standards Commissioner, and as such, I just don't regard it to be in the public interest.
He says that most people's perception of budget estimate hearings is that they are pretty boring. To end today, this is not from any Australian state or territory, but I thought I'd add in a little extra one for you because I often, in my journey of sourcing news stories, come across some that I like to refer to as like the weirdy of the week. Now, these are stories that make news headlines, but are just so out of the news cycle that it's like they're from Mars. There are often several contenders, like Elon Musk's rocket bits touching the moon forcefully is one of them, for example. Sorry, that is a lesson on how you can manipulate words to make things sound much grosser than they need to be. But my contender for Weirdy of the Week this week is a small German organ. There is a town in eastern Germany which is currently the host of the world's longest concert. Now, in 2001, in a church in Halberstadt, an organ started playing a music piece by composer John Cage. He wrote it back in 1987, and if you do actually play it out normally on the piano in its usual form, it can go anywhere from 20 to 70 minutes. But this is being played so slowly that it will end in the year 2640. So why was it in the news this week, you ask? Well, it's because it played a note on August 5, which coincided with a rare chord change in the song that has now been playing for 25 years. Want to know what it sounded like? Have a listen. The next note of the song will be played in October 2027. And that is it for the Solo Bureau today, friends. Have a great weekend. I am off to Adelaide today, actually. I'm going to hang out with a bunch of people I've known for a very, very long time to attend our annual Christmas in July, which always ends up being in August, so I don't know why we don't change the name of it, which is dress up and themed, and we all take it very, very seriously. So it's going to be very fun. To all of you who seem to be really crook right now, I've come across this week, including some of our guests, who've all got some combination of weird head cold, which is really taking you out. I hope you feel better. And if there's something on your mind keeping you up at night, I hope it gets resolved by Monday. I'll see you there. Bye.